In Beijing's high towers, where fortunes are spun, a silence has fallen, now the damage is done. A story is whispered, it travels like light, of a curse on the powerful, struck down in the night. It started with one, a bright celebrity soul, whose future was promising, beyond all control. The actor, Yu Menglong, with charisma and grace, vanished too quickly, leaving not a trace. His fall was a mystery, from a building so tall. A terrible stumble, or a deliberate call? The official report, it spoke of the drink. A sad, drunken ending, right at the cliff's brink. But the populace muttered, their minds couldn't agree, that such a bright light would just cease to be. They spoke of dark forces, of hands that would push, of a venomous secret, like a deep, sudden rush. The first stone was cast, a seed in the wind, a legend of vengeance that fate had designed. For they said, in his grief, in his final despair, he cursed every tyrant who breathed the cold air. Consider the scene, beneath candelabras, where men of great power raised crystal decanters. A tycoon of tech, with a smile sharp and wide, whose wealth could buy cities, with nothing to hide. He sat at the table, a king on his throne. His past indiscretions were carefully unknown. He joked with his bankers, he sipped at his wine. The world was his oyster, his empire divine. He'd once crossed a path with the actor, it said. A slight that was cruel, a word wrongly spread. A career was damaged, a reputation was marred. A score that was settled, a life that was scarred. Now, as the rich laughter and cheer filled the hall, the tycoon felt something, a terrible call. A chill down his spine, though the fire was bright. Like a shadow was present, concealing the light. He raised up his glass, to our endless success. Then his eyes rolled back wildly, a moment of stress. He grasped at his chest, his face turning gray, and fell from his chair, in a horrifying display. The guests all erupted in chaos and fright. The feast turned to horror, a grim, sudden blight. The doctors pronounced it a sudden heart stop. But a voice in the corner just started to drop. He saw the star falling, he felt the sharp pain. The curse of Yu Menglong has struck once again. The scene shifts again, to the waters so blue, where a powerful minister felt safe and new. He'd gained his high office through channels unseen. His power was sweeping, his hands were quite clean, officially, that's what the stories had been. He sailed on his yacht, a vessel of pride, with polished brass fittings, and nowhere to hide. He spoke on his phone, about deals yet to sign. His future was golden, a truly grand design. He remembered the time, he'd ignored the young star. Dismissed his appeals, like a distant, faint scar. He'd blocked a petition, had turned a blind eye to an injustice, letting a dreamer just die. As the sun started setting, a mist started to rise. A fog thick and chilling, obscuring the skies. It crept over the deck, with a silent, cold dread, and wrapped the grand vessel in white, ghostly thread. The captain cried out, the radar is blind. We've lost all direction, no signals we find. The minister scoffed, this is merely the sea. Just steer to the shore, and listen to me. But as he gave orders, a shape in the mist, a figure appeared, with a mournful, pale fist. It wasn't a man, but an outline of gray, that stood at the railing, then faded away. A blast of cold air, a sudden, sharp list. The yacht hit a reef that the radar had missed. The hull cracked and splintered, the water rushed in. The minister screamed, this can't be. Where to begin? He clung to the wreckage, alone in the foam. His palace, his power, all far from his home. He drowned in the current, beneath the thick white. Consumed by the curse, in the cold, misty night. The sea claimed his body, the fog held his breath. Another strong pillar had succumbed to the death. A soul full of darkness, now pulled to the deep. While the spirit of Menglong forever will keep a watch on the cruel, on the bitter and grand, who rule with an iron and merciless hand. The story continues, its rhythm quite fast. The shadow is moving, its die has been cast. A woman of talent, an architect's mind, who built all the structures the city could find. Her towers scraped heaven, majestic and sleek. But secrets lay hidden, the truth she would speak to no one, of corners she cut in her greed, of cheap, faulty wiring, a dangerous seed. She'd also been ruthless to those in her way, including the family that Yu Menglong held sway. She'd used her connections to steal an old plot, where his sister's small school had been sadly forgot. Now, she stood on the rooftop, surveying her pride. A glass edifice where the people could hide from the dust and the chaos of life on the street. She felt like a goddess, complete and discreet. Suddenly, a shudder, a deep, rumbling sound. A tremor that shook the high, perilous ground. It wasn't an earthquake, the sky was quite calm. But the tower was groaning, a terrible harm. A crack, thin as paper, ran right through the wall. Starting right where she stood, predicting her fall. The lights started flickering, the glass started to break. A terror took hold, for goodness sake. She ran to the stairwell, her heart in her throat. But the concrete was crumbling, a dangerous note. A floor gave way sharply, a sickening crash. Her beautiful tower was collapsing in a flash. She fell through the stories, a terrifying descent. A payment exacted, a purpose well meant. She was buried in rubble, the dust filled the air. A victim of structures built without care. The steel couldn't save her, the glass shattered down. The curse had dismantled the power of the town. The woman of structure, so proud and so cold. Her chapter was ended, her story untold. The whisper grew louder, it turned to a cry. As the powerful watched their companions pass by. No logic could hold, no reason could stick to the pattern of doom, so sudden and quick. There was the scholar of ancient renown, whose history lessons now failed in the town. He'd rewritten the records to flatter the state, ignoring the past, sealing truth's cruel fate. He'd publicly scorned the young actor's good name. A poisonous ink, a literary flame, that blackened his character, tarnished his soul, making the fall seem an easy dark goal. He sat in his study, with scrolls piled so high, preparing a treatise, attempting to try to argue the merits of absolute might, ignoring the shadows that crept through the night. He reached for his inkpot, but drew back in dread. For the liquid was black, like the blood that was shed. The pages before him, though blank and so white, began to reveal a pale, sickening light. Words started to form, but written in reverse. A terrifying script, a dark, hidden verse. It spoke of the lies that he'd spun through the years. It echoed the scorn that provoked bitter tears. The paper caught fire, the flames licking fast, consuming the falsehoods that never would last. He shrieked as the heat turned his library gray, and the books of true history burned clean the way. He rushed toward the exit, but the door was locked tight, consumed by the knowledge he'd hidden from light. The pages were scorching, the paper was thin. The truth found its outlet, consuming the sin. The scholar of malice, undone by the pen, was silenced forever, never to rise again. In the vast, golden halls of a cinema grand, worked a film producer, with cash in his hand. He stole every profit, he cheated the cast. His blockbusters famous, his kindness unsurpassed, in its absence. He held all the power, deciding who won, and made sure that Menglong's new project was done before it began, through whispers and bribes, destroying the work of those creative scribes. He threw a big party, his ego on show, a monument built to the money's fierce glow. He stood on the stage, addressing the crowd, his chest swelling hugely, exceedingly proud. He lifted a hammer, to shatter a vase, a symbol of power, in time and in space. But as the steel swung, a terrible sound, a note deep and chilling, was suddenly found. It was the actor's voice, singing soft and low, a melody ancient, of sadness and woe. The producer froze stiffly, the hammer held high, as his own great production played up in the sky. But the scene was reversed, the credits went wrong. The heroes were villains, the weak ones were strong. The faces around him began to distort, reflecting the greed that he always had sought. His hands started shaking, his vision turned black. He suffered a seizure, there was no turning back. He tumbled from stage, onto concrete so hard. His mind shattered wholly, his fortune was starred with scandal and ruin, his memory defiled. A broken, sad figure, forever exiled. The glamour had vanished, the money was dust. The price of betrayal, the terrible thrust. The king of the movies, who silenced the bright, now screamed in the darkness, devoid of all light. The curse was relentless, it showed no reserve for those who believed only power could serve. There was the general, retired and quite grim, whose wealth came from contracts, filled to the brim with kickbacks and bribes, for weapons of might. He cared not for peace, only winning the fight, for his wallet. He'd mocked the young actor for being so soft, a man of mere poems, whose spirit was loft, why and useless. He sat in his bunker, designed to keep safe from every disaster, every human mischief. He drank pure baijiu, the spirit so clear, believing his walls would protect him from fear. A tremor began, but not of the earth. A sound of loud marching, proving its worth. He checked all the monitors, looking outside. No troops were approaching, no armies could ride. But the sound grew much closer, surrounding the room. Like 10,000 soldiers were sealing his doom. He heard the commands, but spoken by none. A phantom battalion, whose long march was done. Then the pipes in the ceiling began to just leak. But the liquid was thin, and the color was bleak. It wasn't just water, it started to stain the floor and the ceiling, a pattern of pain. It looked like the ink from the scholar's demise, reflecting the greed in the general's harsh eyes. The walls started peeling, the concrete grew weak. The bunker was sinking, without a sound or a squeak. He tried to escape, but the door wouldn't budge. Trapped in the fortress, he bore the deep grudge of a man who knew justice, though late it may be, had finally caught up, for the whole world to see. The bunker was drowning, a coffin of steel. The price of corruption, the wounds it did feel. The warrior of darkness, consumed by the tide, with nowhere to run, and nowhere to hide. From the halls of the party to the screens of the show, the men and the women of fortune all know. They glance at the papers, their faces are pale. The accidents mounted, beyond the scale. A financier vanishes, his jet lands on stone. A governor arrested, his corruption now known. A film mogul bankrupt, his power all spent. All part of the cycle, a dark testament. They call it bad luck, a coincidence grand, that the mighty are failing all over the land. But the poets and gossips, they speak of the cause of the actor who fell, defying all laws. His spirit is haunting, they say with affright. He only seeks justice, with terrible might. For every small cruelty, for every harsh deed, the curse finds a target, a wicked black seed. They remember his beauty, his kind, gentle eyes. Now a force of destruction that lives in the skies. He doesn't seek gold, he doesn't want fame. He only seeks balance, putting the wicked to shame. So the elite now tremble, in mansions of white. They lock all their doors in the deepening night. They've gained all the world, but their souls they have lost. And now the grim reaper is counting the cost. For the truth of the curse is not magic or spell. It's the fear of the people, the stories they tell. When the powerful fall, and the wicked lose ground, a mythical hero is instantly found. They needed a reason, a force to explain why the structure of power was fraught with such pain. And the image of Menglong, the star who was wronged, is the perfect dark vessel, where justice belonged. The curse is the conscience, that won't let them sleep. It's the secrets they bury, the promises they keep, of silence and cruelty, of taking the prize, now reflected in horror right back in their eyes. The ballad is endless, the lesson is clear. The whispers are louder, year after year. The spirit of vengeance, it seeks out the rot. The moment of weakness, the place is forgot. The elite are still falling, the pattern is set. A great, tragic ballad the world won't forget. The rhyme of the story, the flow, and the dread will continue until the last villain is dead. The tale of Yu Menglong, a legend of plight, will forever remind them to fear the deep night. The tale of Yu Menglong had only begun. Though many had fallen, by yacht or by steel, the memory of one man was chilling and real. A tycoon of tech, with a smile sharp and wide, whose wealth could buy cities, with nothing to hide. He held all the wires, the algorithms he wove. A master of data, a god from above. His name was whispered in circles of might. He commanded the markets from morning till night. He sat at his table, beneath crystal glass, where light was refracted, and moments would pass in toasts to his ego, his triumphs and skill. But fate had a darker, more menacing will. He remembered the actor, the star that he broke. A viral sensation, whose fame he bespoke to destroy, for the youth had refused his command to sign away rights to the soul of his brand. The tycoon had laughed, with a cynical sneer. You're a product, a number, a moment of fear. You'll do what I tell you, or vanish and fade. A promise of ruin, maliciously made. He'd used all his power, his bots, and his screens to flood the young actor with hateful, cruel memes. He'd cancelled the contracts, he'd tainted the streams, and murdered his future, his passions, and dreams. When the actor then fell, the tycoon felt joy. One less silly artist, one less pretty boy. He never considered the spirit he freed. A ghost with a purpose, a terrible need. Now, at his great banquet, where hundreds were dining, the gold on the plates and the silver were shining. He spoke to his bankers, he joked with his peers, drowning all conscience beneath expensive beers. He bragged of the billions he'd just overthrown, his secrets well guarded, his corruption unknown. He lifted his goblet, the crystal so thin, and prepared for the speech where his glory would begin. To the future we seize, let the small lives all mourn. He laughed, a harsh sound, like a garment being torn. But just as the words left his arrogant tongue, a terrible chill through the ballroom was flung. The lights, which were brilliant, began to just dim. The music grew hollow, the outlook grew grim. He looked at his glass, and he saw, with deep dread, the reflection was wrong, it showed only the dead. Not his face, but a visage, so youthful and pale. The eyes of Yu Menglong, a sorrowful wail. The actor's reflection, so clear and so bright, stared straight at the tycoon with pure, spectral might. He blinked hard and shuddered, the image was gone. Just polished, cold crystal, reflecting the dawn of a panic so deep, that it rooted his feet. A terror so sudden, disturbingly sweet, to the shadowy figure that now stood so near. Invisible, chilling, provoking deep fear. He tried to give warning, to speak out and shout. But the breath in his body was suddenly out. His throat was constricted, his vision blurred fast. The air in the chamber felt thick as lead cast. The wine in his goblet then started to swirl. It darkened and thickened, around an 8-whirl. It turned from deep crimson to poison black ink. A fluid of malice, right at the glass's brink. The tycoon looked down, with a horrifying gasp. The dark, oily surface, held in his weak grasp, reflected the messages, hateful and vile. The comments he'd ordered, row after row after row, in a terrible file. The words that he'd used to destroy the young star were swimming like maggots, leaving a scar on the surface of wine, a terrible sight. The poison of language, now black as the night. He screamed, but no sound could escape from his lips. As the goblet grew colder, it slipped from his grips. It crashed to the floor, where the black fluid spread, forming a pattern, like blood newly shed. And rising from the stain, a mist quickly rose. Not merely a vapor, but sorrow's dark prose. It coiled around him, a chilling embrace. The despair of the victim now haunting the place. His highly prized suit fell too tight on his chest. His heart was now racing, deprived of all rest. He stumbled and clutched at the lapels of his coat. A terrible pressure, a crushing new note. His power was fading, his connections broke down. His empire was listing, a wreck in the town. He felt the invisible hands push and then shove. An unseen revenge from the heavens above. He fell from his chair, hitting marble so cold. A puppet whose strings had been snapped and unrolled. The crowd stood and gaped, in shock and in awe, at the collapse of the man who defied every law. His face turned to purple, his breathing ceased whole. The curse had demanded the ultimate toll. The official reports spoke of stress and bad health. But the staff whispered stories of phantom, dead wealth. They cleaned up the stain, but the darkness remained. The banquet was finished, the high power drained. The glass was still shattered, the darkness profound. The curse of Yu Menglong had conquered this ground. The star who was murdered by algorithms and spite had taken his vengeance in the heart of the night. The tycoon was finished, his legacy bleak. The ghost of the actor will endlessly speak.